lot of these Western media outlets are owned by governments of other countries. So we have to also look at their interests in the larger scale of why do they want to depict Africans in this way?
Hey fam, welcome back. Today I am here with my fellow Ethiopians, and they reached out to me because of the current situation that is going on in Ethiopia and basically the lies that have been going on. So they're deeply concerned about the situation. So I'm glad they reached out. I want us to have this discussion so that maybe we can clarify any misinformation that might have been, said about Ethiopia in the international community. So before we get into that, though, I want my people here to introduce themselves, and we'll get right into it.
Hi, my name is Rahel. I'm located in Las Vegas. I'm new to community organizing, but I just felt passionate to speak out about the issues back home, and this is why I'm here.
Great. Hermela?
Hi, my name is Hermela. I am currently in Vancouver, Canada. I have been organizing within the Ethiopian community here for about 10 years now. A lot of the work that we do is related to making sure that diaspora stay informed and stay deeply connected to their country. What's been going on has been very personal to me and many families like mine, just because of the way that the previous regime has been targeting people. So thank you for giving us this platform to speak out.
And you, sir?
Hello, yes, my name is Ermias. I am based in London, United Kingdom. I've lived in London since the age of 7. I've been involved in the community protesting against what we've been seeing in the previous regime since I was 10 years old. I've been a part of the Ethiopian community, organizing the youth as well for the last 10, 15 years. And I'm very passionate about Ethiopia. I'll be moving to Ethiopia next week, God willing, the flights carry on. And yeah, I'm very happy to be here.
I think this is very important, us having this discussion, because we hear it from all other sides, but not every side, and that's really important for the narrative, right? So the first thing I want to ask you guys is, since our audience is mainly the diaspora community, I want you guys to explain to them like a brief history of why we are where we are right now as a country.
Right, I could maybe give a bit. Go ahead.
It's definitely, I think the way that the issue right now has been reported on has definitely not taken the initiative to go further back in time. A lot of the current conflict is based on ethnic tensions that have been arising in Ethiopia since 1991. There were a lot of systems that were put in place by the TPLF-led EPRDF, which was the central government for about 27 years. Since then, there has been funding of ethnic-based attacks throughout the country. And right now, we are dealing with the aftermath of that.
Okay, so but for people that are confused, because the narrative right now is a whole government, a central government, attacked a regional government, going against his own people, and basically the word on the street is genocide. So how does that, translate into that?
So I would say that the real problem here is we have a group called the Tigrayan People Liberation Front, which has been pretty much the leading power in Ethiopia for the last 27 years, which after the transition to the new government under Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed, went to the Tigray region and created that as their power base. They then decided to hold elections, even though the National Election Board of Ethiopia had postponed it because of COVID-19. So going against the constitutional order. Having then done that, they said that they wouldn't accept the federal government's power, and this created the friction you see between the two. However, the real problem then became when the TPLF attacked the Northern Command. The Northern Command is a part of the army which has been placed in Tigray for the last 20 years since the Ethiopian-Eritrean War. And what we see, therefore, is an army group which has protected the Tigrayan people for 2 decades, was attacked by the TPLF militia during the night. They admitted this on their media, Wayane, in which they said it was anticipatory self-defense and killed the army people. And that is why the federal government decided to take what they call a law enforcement operation against TPLF.
So another thing that made big news is the network being shut down. And most of the conversation revolved around saying the government did this so that they can perform what they want in the dark without people seeing or saying anything about it, right? So now Ethio Telecom came out and said something else. They say they have footage. What do you say about that? Do you buy that?
If that's directly to me, so I'd say
Sure.
the CEO of Ethio Telecom showed CCTV footage of the TPLF uniformed militia going in and actually attacking the guards, the Ethio Telecom guards, and disrupting the network. So there's quite damning evidence against them to show that. And even in their own admissions, they say that they were responsible for shutting down the communication, so the Ethiopian National Defense Force couldn't call for backup. So I would say that's pretty damning evidence, really.
Yeah. So what do you think about there's also people say that TPLF has been funding this terrorism acts around Ethiopia that were happening here and there. So does that have any truth to it? How do we know for sure that they're the ones funding this?
I think the best way for us to know for sure, the federal government has stated that they do have evidence, but the very first step in order to being able to access this classified information is for them to face a court of law, which is what they have been actively avoiding by fleeing. And right now their locations are unknown. So we will definitely confirm these allegations in a court of law.
Yeah, as of now, they're just allegation from the government. Let's just say that because, we don't want to say something we don't know for sure. But how about the claims that they've been saying Eritrea is involved? We've been hearing that a lot, even though Eritrea came out and said, nope, they had nothing to do with it, even though a missile was launched on them. So what are your thoughts on that narrative that has been going on?
I believe they're trying to internationalize the conflict, which is why they sent the missiles into Eritrea. And also, they want the international media to take on their narrative of what's going on. So pretty much they're trying to control what's going on from the inside.
Yeah, speaking of media, I'm glad you mentioned that. Like, there are not many medias, like especially the West medias, that talked about this, like at least in a way where you would think it's balanced, unbiased, subjective, objective. But like one article I found from Washington Post article, I don't know if you read it. They were talking about new accounts being created. So let me read for you a direct quote from Washington Post. So they said, quote, Twitter data collected from November 1st to 10 showed that 30% of tweets about Tigray and Abiy were from accounts created this year. That's not that's not the weird part. Nearly 50% of these tweets were from accounts created in late October and early November. The number of new accounts created per day grew from an average of 21 to 245. Their tweets are overwhelmingly anti-government. And they said this, like, I quote, they wrote, "It is an organized movement." And they were talking about how they found out that this article, the person that wrote it, they were saying how they went ahead and searched for this 90,000 tweets, and they went through all of them, and most of them, more than 50% of them, were anti-government, anti-Abiy, and they were created now after all the situation in the Tigray region. So, I mean, what are your thoughts about that?
So there has been a known movement by Diaspora by the name of Digital Wayane. So a lot of times when there is conflict within Ethiopia, there is a creation of a lot of new Twitter accounts. And we definitely see that. And we see the way that the narrative is shifted. Twitter is a very, very powerful media outlet that is able to directly connect these people with decision makers at the end of the day. So this campaign is heavily focused on being able to provide easy access to anyone. They have direct tweet templates and things like that that make it easy for them to replicate the same message over and over. They definitely believe that repetition is the key for their message right now.
Yeah, but what's interesting also is in this article, not only in this article, we know maybe like back home, as you know, most Ethiopians use Facebook, specifically Facebook, when it comes to social media, not Twitter. So before, if you remember, like whenever there's misinformation, like fake Photoshop going on, anything that has to do with giving the public a wrong information, it was Facebook. Facebook was being used, but now this makes it different because now it's Twitter. It hasn't been Twitter for us, at least Ethiopians, and that's what the stats show in this new era. Most accounts that were created were Twitters, and also the article says they found out that there were actually even trainings, as in they will give them trainings on how to use hashtags, how to use certain words and what exactly to say, and if possible to speak in English, specifically English. There were that the article claims that was going on. And also another thing they found out was, usually, you know, when there's conflict within countries or any other countries, if you've noticed, it's usually bots. Like bots are the ones that manipulate that algorithm or write what they want. This time around, there are real people. It's just it's created at once and it's like weird on its own, but they are real people. It's not bots. It's not like paid algorithm. It is actual people being trained to tweet these things so that they maybe possibly go viral, or, you know, maybe mislead the international community. You know, that's what I found interesting in this article.
I think what we've seen in terms of the TPLF is that they've been very organized on the digital side. But what we've also seen is it's not something new. It's been something that they've been building for quite a while. Another case in Ethiopia was to do with the Oromo protests. One thing they found is the terms used in that protest sort of went down when the communications were cut off in Tigray. So there was people who had been trained from that side to be working on this level of disinformation. So it's coordinated disinformation, both from the region, but also in the diaspora, which represents that region. So go ahead, sorry.
But let me ask you, no, it's fine. But let me ask you a question to that. Like, yes, we can agree on the misinformation because some things were downright not factual. But the thing is, do you think this big mainstream medias with big audiences, they don't know better? I mean, some people you can mislead, of course, because they don't know the whole story and they'll believe you when you tell them. But do you think there's a reason why they're going with this story, or you think they're misled like the mass?
Well, Western media definitely has a different agenda. Right now, it is masked as a pro-TPLF narrative, but it is a much larger scale than that. A lot of these Western media outlets are owned by governments of other countries. So we have to also look at their interests in the larger scale of why do they want to depict Africans in this way? And I think that is the question that we need to answer in order to understand why they have chosen to actively misinform. There was a mistake made by the BBC in translating a statement made by Prime Minister Dr. Abiy, and the statement was in regards to him condoning the killing of innocent people in order to make sure that his objective was carried out. And that was a very large mistake that was overlooked by many people in that organization. They have since issued an apology, but it still is worth asking the question of why.
So let's come back after the misinformation and all the conflict. Even now, the media is not talking about the development of what's been happening. So now that the conflict looks like it's dying down, because now that the government has seized that region, now they're going after hunting down those specific leaders. And I think they have 10 million over their heads. Like if you catch them or give the government some insights, you'll get money, right? So this approach I've never seen in all my years. So what do you think about that, like a bounty hunter thing going on, the government offering that to people?
It's probably not something you've seen before in Ethiopia, but it's something which is quite common when a nation is going after, I guess, what you term criminals. And this is something which we've seen being used in other regions and in other countries. I think it shows that this is a law enforcement operation, and it is about catching specific people. And it's not about a specific region or a specific people, but it's about catching people who've committed the crimes. So the government and the military are taking all available options to be able to do that, which I think is, much better than targeting groups, for example, and making it difficult for citizens within the region.
Okay, now that network is up and running, what information do you guys have about the people that were on the ground? Are they claiming that the worst was happening to them, or what's the information right now in Tigray region?
I think what we're seeing in the media and being reported. So we've seen that Mekelle University had a graduation ceremony. We've seen that there's been flights to parts of Tigray with a football team going to the local area. So a lot of the things that we're seeing on the ground and being reported is different from the picture that is being painted by those who are trying to create this misinformation out there.
Now that we've already covered that there were accounts created specifically for this reason, misinformation, or spin some kind of narrative. My question to you is, like, I've heard on those Twitter feeds or like on the internet street, basically, that Tigray people means TPLF, TPLF means Tigray. It's the same. So do you buy that? Do you think that's the whole attitude of Tigray people in general? They would rather lose everything and support this 20, 30 leaders that are wanted by the government? Do you think they are the same, or because I don't know what to believe right now because of the fake accounts that are created? Is it really what the people feel? And do you have any idea about that?
Well, there is definitely a different sentiment when we are talking about the diaspora versus the accounts made by locals. There is, it's very distinct, and we are hoping that when more information comes out, we are able to accurately give a more balanced approach to what the people of Tigray are actually saying. That will be done by the election process. At the election process that took place in Tigray in September, the results were overwhelming, to a point where TPLF won the regional election by 98.5% with 97% voter turnout. These numbers in any Western country are unbelievable, especially when there are multiple parties that are participating in the process. So it definitely makes you question what is going on the ground.
Yeah. Okay. Because it's interesting. If that's really the case, I don't know what to think, because those specific people are the ones that are wanted, and the reasoning behind me doubting that if they really believe that is I saw a few videos, for example, the ones that gave themselves up to the federal government when they caught them and they said we don't want to fight, and they gave away their guns, and they were talking about how they were forced to join this war, and uh, there were young kids, like teenagers and underage kids, that were according to them allegedly forced to go to war with their own people. So that's why I'm like, which one do I believe? Because at the end of the day, if that's truly what they want, how do we go about this as a country is my concern. Now that we've discussed what has been going on, why it started, and where we are right now, what do you think is the solution going forward to a unified, peaceful Ethiopia?
I think one of the ways to address the issues that we're going through right now is to directly address ethnic federalism, which is what we're dealing with. I think our main problems won't go away until we actually directly deal with that. So maybe when it comes to just having unified conversations within regions, and I guess going forward with elections and allowing the people to really have a voice rather than outsiders dictating what they should do and how they should do it.
Okay, thank you. Hermela?
For the very first step is to catch and reprimand the TPLF. From there, we should begin a journey of national dialogue to address things like ethnic federalism, but also to focus on our future commonalities and what unites us. In that way, we'll be able to re-envision and readjust ourselves to have a common goal. Right now, Ethiopia is very deeply divided. So we definitely need to have and envision a similar goal in order to work towards it.
Okay. Ermias?
I mean, just to add to that, I think with Ethiopia having 70% of its population under 35 and with a large youth unemployment, I think economics is going to be at the forefront of what we need to address after the constitutional questions, and getting those youth employed and looking to the future and franchised into what Ethiopia can become is going to be the key for any administration post-election.
One last one, because you mentioned that this ethnic federalism. So what do you say to people when they catch feelings? I hear them say, like, when you want to dismantle that, that means you're taking away my identity. Like, my tribe is me. And, that argument, what would you tell that person that, how do you explain to them it's not that important? Or is there a way that you can also include that in when trying to unite like 80 plus tribes?
Addressing ethnic federalism, I think, will be on a human rights basis. We have to teach our community and our country that ethnic rights is really just human rights, and we have to teach them what that really means. Start with the basics. When you're trying to represent an ethnicity, their culture, and all that, that fall under the umbrella of human rights itself. So we have to teach that and educate them and get rid of the ethnic media, so we don't isolate different communities. And once we do that, I think it'll be a lot easier for people to understand what it is they're actually saying and wanting.
Yeah, but what would you say? Like, I'm sure there's a lot of people actually that would say, why would you take away my media? Why would you want to take away my pride? My tribe is me. So how would you explain to them that they can be their tribe, they can appreciate that, they can love that about themselves, and they can identify as that, but as a whole, like to also love the fact that they're Ethiopians and they shouldn't discriminate against another tribe? Like how do you think going forward we can do that with people that are in this other side of the spectrum?
Well, when we focus on the rights of tribes and, well, in Amharic it's called Yebiher Beheresaboch, but those rights should be trickled down to an individual basis. When we have individual human rights, they will go up and they will affect and shape the representation and the grievances that people who believe that ethnic federal represents. They will solve those issues and those grievances when we focus on individual human rights. With that, we definitely need to have more dialogue on how we can dismantle ethnic federalism, because we want to create an environment that's inclusive. We definitely want to do that, especially here in the West. We have the ability in our respective countries to live in whichever location that we desire within those borders, and many Ethiopians are not afforded that right. So we need to shift our attention to the individual instead of the tribe.
Fair enough. Ermias?
So I would say that with Ethiopia, the model, the problem is that the ethnicity takes supremacy within the federalist structure. I don't think, federalism is a problem in itself. That's a political question on how Ethiopia wants to organize itself, but it's how minorities within those regions are their rights are not equally protected against the majorities. And that's why we see a lot of the clashes in Ethiopia. So people should be able to have their languages, their cultures, and their spirituality respected, while ensuring that the state looks after ethnic minorities within those different regions. And so the balance between state and regions is not quite right in the current constitution. So federalism can work in Ethiopia, but it shouldn't be based on ethnicity, and it needs to be based on a better formula.
Okay. So, yeah, do you have anything to add? Because we're pretty much done with our discussion. Anything anyone wants to add, and we'll close. Okay, if you don't have anything to add, then thank you so much for coming here and discussing the other side that we haven't been hearing a lot in the international media, mainstream media. We've been hearing it maybe in our own media, Ethiopian local medias, but not necessarily on other platforms. So thank you guys so much for coming here, and it was insightful. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having us.